I built that company with nothing but time, discipline, and silence. No investors, no shortcuts. Just 23 years of early mornings and late nights. Decisions that cost me sleep, risks that cost me relationships, and a work ethic that cost me more than I ever expected to pay. By the time I was 61, the company had over 200 employees, 3 regional offices, and a reputation in the industry that I was genuinely proud of. Not because of the money, because of what it represented. Patience, integrity, doing things the right way, even when the wrong way was faster. I had one daughter, Layla. She was everything to me after her mother passed. Smart, warm, and far too trusting for a world that doesn't always deserve that kind of trust. When she brought Marcus home 5 years ago, I gave him every chance a man could give. He was sharp, well-dressed, and confident in the way that young men sometimes, or before life has, tested them properly. I didn't dislike him. I just watched him carefully. That was always my nature. Observe first, judge later. They married within 2 years. Layla was happy. That was enough for me at the time. When Marcus lost his job in corporate finance, he came to me. Not begging, but close enough. He had a way of framing requests that made them sound like opportunities for you, not favors for him. He said he wanted to learn the business, said he wanted to contribute, said he wanted to build something for Layla and their future family. I should have listened more carefully to what he didn't say, but I looked at my daughter's face when he spoke, and I made a decision that any father in that position might have made. I gave him a role, senior operations manager, decent salary, real responsibility. I told him the same thing I told every person I ever hired. Earn the trust, and the trust will open every door. What I didn't expect was how quickly he would start looking for the master key. Within 18 months, I started pulling back by design. My health had been giving me quiet warnings, and my doctor was giving me louder ones. I reduced my hours, delegated more, stayed connected but stopped showing up to every meeting. Marcus stepped in naturally and handled things well enough on the surface. So when the board suggested a formal transition, an interim CEO while I focused on recovery, I approved it. I gave Marcus the title. I kept the ownership. I moved quietly into the background. And I watched. Looking back now, that was the most important decision I ever made. Not the company, not the title, the watching. Because what I saw over the next 14 months changed everything. I thought I knew about the man my daughter had chosen. The first sign was subtle, the kind of thing you could explain away if you wanted to. Marcus stopped copying me on internal emails. Not all of them, just the ones that mattered. Budget approvals, vendor renegotiations, a quiet restructuring of the senior leadership team that I heard about through someone else, not through him. When I asked, he smiled and said he didn't want to burden me while I was recovering. Said he was handling it. Said I should rest. I nodded, said nothing. But I noted it. The second sign was harder to excuse. My operations director, a man named Philip, who had been with me for 11 years, called me one evening at home. His voice was careful, measured. The way someone sounds when they're trying to be loyal to 2 people at once, and the weight of it is becoming too much. He told me Marcus had been telling the leadership team that I was stepping down permanently. Not transitioning, not recovering, done. He had started referring to himself in external meetings as the CEO, not interim. He had quietly removed my name from 2 client contracts and replaced it with his own. I didn't react. I thanked Philip for calling. I told him to continue as normal and say nothing. I didn't react. I observed. The third sign, the one that shifted something permanently inside me, didn't come from the office. It came from my daughter. Layla called me one Sunday afternoon, and her voice had a flatness to it that a father recognizes immediately. Not sadness exactly, more like someone who has been spoken to in a way that stays with you and you're not sure how to name it yet. She mentioned, carefully, that Marcus had told her I was becoming a liability to the company, that my presence confused employees, that it was better for everyone, including me, if I stayed away. He had said this to my daughter about her father, and she was calling me because some part of her, the part that knew me, couldn't accept it without checking. I kept my voice steady. I told her I was fine. I told her not to worry. I asked her how she was eating, how she was sleeping, whether she was happy. She paused before she answered that last one, a pause I stored somewhere deep and did not forget. After the call, I sat in my study for a long time. I didn't feel anger, not the way most people would describe anger. It was something quieter than that. A door closing, a clarity arriving. I had given Marcus a title, a salary, a platform, my trust in my family's name, and he had decided that wasn't enough. He wanted permanence. He wanted me gone, not just from the office, but from my own legacy. He had started building a version of the story where the company was his and I was simply a footnote from the past. I picked up the phone and called my attorney. Then I called my accountant. Then I started planning the day I would walk back in. I chose a Tuesday. No announcement. No warning. I simply arrived at the office at 8 in the morning, dressed the way I used to dress when I ran that building, suit pressed, expression calm, nothing to prove. The receptionist stood up when she saw me, not because she was told to, because people who have worked for you for years carry a certain memory in their body. She knew what my presence meant. I walked through the floor slowly, greeted people by name, asked about families, projects, deadlines. I had built relationships in that building that no title change could erase. Marcus was in the boardroom running the weekly senior meeting when I opened the door and stepped inside. The room went still. He looked up, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw it. The thing underneath the confidence. The thing that confident men work very hard to keep hidden. He recovered quickly, smiled, and said my name like I was a guest visiting someone else's house. I sat down at the head of the table. I placed a single document in the center. It was a letter from my attorney, signed and notarized, formally reclaiming my operational authority as sole owner of the company, effective immediately. Alongside it was an audit summary, 14 months of decisions made without my knowledge or consent, documented clearly and without emotion. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply said, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about ownership. Marcus left the company 2 weeks later. The formal terms were handled between attorneys. I didn't make it personal. I didn't expose him publicly. I didn't need the world to see his humiliation. I had not come back for revenge. I had come back for clarity. Layla took time. That was the part that cost the most. Watching your daughter sit across from you and quietly understand that the man she married had been systematically working to erase her father. That kind of truth doesn't land all at once. It settles slowly over weeks. But she called me one evening about a month later and simply said, "I see it now, Dad." That was enough. What I learned from those 14 months is something I carry with me now. Power is not the title on the door. It is not the salary. It is not who speaks the loudest in the room. Real power is knowing what you own and being patient enough to let someone else reveal themselves before you act. I didn't chase Marcus out of that building. I simply returned to what was always mine and let the truth do the rest. Some men mistake silence for weakness. They always learn the difference eventually.